Hello everyone, BD Voro here, and today I'm going to be doing, I guess, the continuation of the Thunder God collaboration as well as the Toneri video that I kind of also hinted at the end, where I would continue to talk about Toneri here a bit. And as you guys can tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about the 10 strongest Naruto / Boruto characters, the strongest characters in the franchise, whether that be Part 1, Shippuden, or Boruto, not games. And with me today, I have my great friend Thunder God here. Say what's up, Thunder God.
That's what's up. Hello. How is everybody doing? You better be having a blessed day. You clicked on this video. You already clicked the like button if you didn't click it now. And if you didn't subscribe, you might as well hit that button too. So you know what I'm saying? I already did it for you.
There you go.
And yeah, we're here to talk about this. It's gonna be a very fun video, very interesting video. We're gonna talk about it all. Not all of it, but the top 10. So yeah, let's get right into that.
And like always, TG has the more cleaner intro.
yeah. I mean, like when I'm recording, bro, like that's the one part I don't script. I'm like, you know what? Whatever comes out, comes out. Whatever tells you that shit. That's funny.
So at number 10, I'm gonna put Toneri here. Toneri is really contentious, I think, in terms of like this list. Now, I'm not going to be elaborating quite on why Toneri is even relevant in this discussion of the video, just because I've already explained a lot of that in my last video talking about Toneri, so go check that out if you haven't. I do think there is an argument to be made that he does and doesn't make this list, which we'll talk about that here in a minute. But when we look at Toneri's feats, Toneri does fight a prime Naruto compared to the adult Naruto we see in Boruto. That adult Naruto we see have feats against Momoshiki. Momoshiki being this big Chad that is above Kaguya and all those statements, blah blah blah. And then we have Toneri in his chakra cloak being able to then fight that level of Naruto. There's also other feats as well that I didn't elaborate in the past video that I do want to bring up here. One of them is that the chakra ciphering is just so much better than what Momoshiki has ever shown. It takes him hours. Like if you go off like the time lapse from the fight in the Chunin exams when Momoshiki charges that big attack and then launches it, that's like middle of the day if you look at like how the sky is. But then it's like nighttime when Sasuke teleports the Kage and Boruto to the dimension with Momoshiki. So right there's multiple hours being taken, and then there's a statement from Momoshiki that says, I've only ciphered about 50% of your chakra. Then we look at Toneri, who, like, in base form can, like, cipher all the chakra within, like, a second. It's kind of insane, and if you take that statement that Sakura says, that says almost all of his chakra, or all of his chakra, or something like that, it's just so much of a better feat than what Momoshiki has, as well as, like, the golems. Yeah. I don't know if you want to get into the golem feat.
Well, just to, like, talk about that, too, I feel like that's also, like way superior than, like, Rinnegan absorption, too. Like, he, like, literally fists this dude Naruto, and this actually like absorbs all his chakra and like turns it into like a raw blast, and like that's it. Like compared to like Pain, who like takes time to like actually take the chakra. So it's definitely like a step above, especially like considering like that's like a full 9 tails like that he's able to, you know, really put out of commission. There's also the Golem, which is really interesting because, for example, you have Momoshiki, right? In the movie, he has this Golem. He's taking on, you know, pretty much like fatigued like Naruto and Sasuke. Sasuke's fatigued because he used his Rinnegan teleportation. Naruto's fatigued because he had 50% of his chakra drained. And, you know, they have to combine their powers, which you could argue roughly brings them around to like a full power Naruto or Sasuke, because Momoshiki himself thinks they're very strong. But then here comes Toneri in the movie, and he's like able to, like, with his golem, like completely detached from his body. Like there's this whole other fight going on. It's just completely throttling the full 9 tails. Like that's just outside of Naruto's body. Like there's like 2 different fights going on. He's fighting Naruto and like bodying him, and then like his golem's like completely bodying like the full 9 tails as well.
Yeah, there's also, like, even if you kind of want to go for, like, blow for blow, like, how strong each is, like, Toneri pretty much kind of, like, bodies that Biju Sage or KCM2 Sage Mode Naruto. Again, it depends on your interpretation. But that Naruto who's at his peak, there's no reason to say he's not at his full strength. But when he's at his full strength, and he's able to then be blocked and countered by Toneri, and then we get this 50% 6-path Naruto who in Taijutsu can beat fused Momoshiki. So then it's kind of like when it comes to like that raw ability to fight, it's just like Toneri has that. There is also like the idea that maybe like in general Six Paths should be above any form of Biju, which is fair, but I'm saying here that it should be comparable because like that's such a big difference in chakra levels to go from half your chakra, if not even weaker, because he got beat around a little bit before that, so it could actually be less than 50%.
Agreed.
There is also the argument for Boruto being top 10. If you think Borushiki is Boruto plus Fuse Momoshiki, then yeah, that could even be possibly in the same tier as Toneri, if not Toneri a little bit higher, but there is that argument to make. There's also the argument that the statement with Toneri where he says that he's gained the power like Hamura, you can take that face value and say Hamura should be that high as well. There is also statements of Toneri where in one of the guidebooks for the movie, it says the strongest enemy for the movie, which is kind of insane because like that would be the strongest enemy at the time, which does also confirm the back of the box set for where it says he is stronger than Kaguya. That does also support that as well. So right there, it's just like there's many arguments for Toneri being 10 and above Momoshiki, Kaguya, Borushiki, etc.
Just to also like add on to that statement, like it could be interpreted like a couple ways, like the strongest enemy, like that could be from like in like
that you had
relevance to like Naruto, like the strongest enemy they faced or at the time, or like out of everybody they faced, this is the strongest enemy like to appear. So it also, it can be interpreted a couple ways. There's like a certain level of like consistency, like with the promotional material for like Toneri, where he just has really good statements.
Yeah, I agree with that. For number 9, as it kind of follows, we're going to continue with Urashiki. Urashiki doesn't really have, like, Thunder God will agree with me, he's a little interesting, to say the least.
I mean, look, I was gonna use a word, but we're gonna say he's very special. Like he's a very special character.
Yeah.
And read between the lines with me, people. You know what I'm saying. It's the R word. I'm not gonna say it. It's 2021. We can't say it. But he's very dumb. He's a very dumb character. Very, like, not good in a combat setting. We kind of talked about that a little bit on my channel, like the time travel arc, like ruined Boruto. But Urashiki, like as a character, is not a very strong combatant. Lets his guard down a lot, makes a lot of very questionable decisions, and has a lot of very questionable statements that like he makes and like are made around him. So very like weird. I mean, he has the statement, of course, of him being like revered as the strongest, but we do know like revered can mean a couple different things. It doesn't inherently mean he is the strongest. He could just be hailed as that. That's not set in stone, and like his scaling's also a little out there because he only really fights like a Sasuke who's like chakra like hasn't even fully recovered, and like every instance he's fighting Sasuke, it's like never really like Sasuke's fully powered. The only time he actually damages him is like when he's off guard and like looking out for Boruto. So he doesn't, he has this weird like scaling to him. But yeah, what do you have to say about this?
Well, for Urashiki, I think like he has some like I said, interesting feats, but like I think probably his best feat is just to look at like how he handles Sasuke when they're in that desert, and then like he can kind of catch off guard Sasuke and absorb all of his chakra, then throw him back. Then Sasuke, sometime between, we don't know really the time lapse between the periods, but Sasuke then can gain enough chakra to teleport out that, come back to the real dimension, and then like Urashiki has to like flee, which is like really weird. I don't know, like, he might just misunderstand chakra. I don't know, it's really weird. He can also, like, fight the Kage, like, without even his Rinnegan, which is, like, that's actually, like, a really good feat, because that's, like, so much better than what Momoshiki and Kinshiki do, especially Kinshiki. Kinshiki got bodied by Kurasuchi and Chojuro.
Yeah, he got ragdolled. He got tossed around.
And then, like, Momoshiki's getting, like, surrounded. It's such, like, a better feat, and he's taking on Gaara and Chojuro, like, doing pretty well. He does kind of, like, get outsmarted by like sand clones as well, but like I don't really know how to make that feat.
Yeah, it's really like he's weird, man, because like for example, right, for like anybody kind of like asking us why he's weird, it's like for example, right, he'll have this ability to like neg durability and like steal like Six Paths characters like chakra completely and steal Bijou right out of people's souls, but then he goes to take the Nine Tails and he's like unable to break through the ceiling jutsu.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's like a disconnect here. There's like the consistency here is really weird. Like what can you do and what can you not do? Like you're somehow OP and fodder at the same time. Like honestly, like it's just odd. It's just very odd.
And like, I'm just gonna throw this on because I'm sure if I don't address this, people are gonna comment this. No, the time travel arc is not a good way of anti-feeding Urashiki. Like, if you go with that, you then, like, I'm gonna post a visual of this just to show how stupid this is.
-2 brain cells,
Dude,
honestly.
yes, like, it essentially creates a scaling paradox where you're saying Pain is higher than Jiraiya, but Jiraiya is higher than Urashiki. Then Pain's weaker than Jubito, Jubito weaker than Jubidara, Kage is above that. Then you got Momoshiki, then Urashiki, and then Urashiki loses back to Jiraiya. It's like, that doesn't make any sense how it would keep going in a loop. So all you would say is that this isn't the actual part 1. This is like, we went over this on God's channel, but like, there is, just go check out that video, and I think I bring up a couple of good explanations on how that isn't the case.
It's just a different Naruto and Jiraiya. Like, you could just argue, that's all you have to say, it's a different Naruto and Jiraiya. There's always like these certain arguments and stuff like that. So yeah, that's all you would really have to say. And then it would just be your onus to prove like, okay, they are the same ones. Then like, it's on you to prove that they are. So, you know, that's kind of the way that kind of goes.
And I think like Urashiki versus Toneri isn't really that contentious. Like, if Toneri's like, he's arguably above Fused Momoshiki, but then you have Urashiki who's flat out stronger than Fused Momoshiki, and then like he gets a fusion increase too. Like, there's just a lot that just says that Urashiki should be higher than Toneri.
At number 8, we have Delta. Now, Delta is an absolute juggernaut. Very, very, very impressive character. So Delta's like has very good like straight up feats. She's a brawler-esque character, and basically her feats are just simply being relative to adult Naruto or a rival to. And if you look at the context of the fight, basically it starts out with Naruto scoping for information, but then it turns out that Delta's a lot stronger than he thought, and there's just this big back and forth. Kawaki makes a couple statements about like Naruto controlling the fight, but then that gets into like, how is Kawaki even able to like perceive this fight if they're that much above him? Is this just like an inconsistent statement by Kawaki? And then we also get like Naruto becoming enraged in the fight, in which Delta's like still able to throw hands with him, like for him to overpower her like eye absorption. Like, she's able to pretty much absorb jutsu through her eye. He has to like, it takes a great amount of effort for him to actually do that. He doesn't just simply like conjure up a jutsu. It takes quite a bit out of him to actually like overwrite chakra absorption. So she actually has very impressive chakra absorption as well. She's able to absorb quite a bit from a Nine Tails Jinchuriki, a complete Nine Tails Jinchuriki. So she has very good feats. She also has like her prosthetic limbs, which like continuously can regen and like gives her like a very unorthodox fighting style. She has like really good showings. She also has healing negation. She pretty much has an eye laser that can pretty much negate like cellular regen. So you can make the argument like any character with regeneration like is gonna have an issue versus her. Like, how she has this ability is like completely like insane and up in the air, because it's an insane ability by Naruto standards. So she has a great amount of hacks and just great scaling and feats against like a full power Naruto. And this is full power Naruto. There's no fights before. He simply was training Boruto in base. So she just has very, very good and solid showings overall.
This part of the list kind of gets into what TG and I talked about over on his video, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out, make sure to go check that out. But
watch that, son.
Yeah, definitely. But essentially, like, we kind of talked about this, like, to lowball Delta and say, oh, here she's like 5% Naruto 6. Because I've seen people argue ridiculous, stupid things like Delta's not even relevant to or relative to 6th Path Naruto, which is so stupid. But like, you can even argue that like Naruto actually had to try, because like even Delta called him out on this fact, and even when they start getting going on the fight, Delta's like pushing Naruto around, injuring him. So it's not even like, oh, this is a weakened Naruto and then oh, Delta loses, the end. It's like, no, there's more to it. I don't know where this idea came from, but like, you guys gotta stop lowballing.
Even if you argue, just because I agree with that, even if you can argue Naruto's stronger, because I do think that is the case, because he wins that fight, obviously. You can definitely argue that. It's just like, it's really odd to go out on a limb and say Delta doesn't scale to him, because she clearly does, like from the fight. Like, she just has like such good showings of it. It's just a weird argument in my eyes, and I think you agree with that.
I just think, like, overall, if we were to talk about, like, how does Urashiki stack up against Delta, like, that's not even really that interesting of a fight. I don't know why people, like, I even kind of thought that was interesting at first, like, but that's not even that interesting. Like, it's
I think,
what do you say?
Just a good way to put it for people is, like, it kind of comes down to how you think like Urashiki would stack up against like a full power Naruto or Sasuke, because he doesn't fight like a full power Sasuke per se. So it's kind of like in the audience viewers' minds, like that's kind of like how this kind of goes, and that's kind of like a way to kind of perceive that. But continue with what you were saying.
Yeah, I think like it's arguable that Urashiki is fighting a peak Sasuke, and you can more so argue that maybe Urashiki caught Sasuke off guard when he drained his energy, which, by the way, I think draining his energy is a pretty good feat of like instantly taking it out. I will also say that it's like, you can argue he just caught him off guard, because even Sasuke looks surprised. And then
he
like
looks at Boruto, yeah.
It's also weird because like he's getting like knocked around by Kirin, and like if you want to go like toe to toe for like how the abilities for each character is, like I don't think many people will disagree that a pretty peak Rasengan that Naruto throws at Delta and then Delta casually like removes that is probably relative to this Kirin, which this Kirin is, there's some arguments for Kirin, but this Kirin is questionable on how strong it is, because there's many interpretations on how it is, on how strong it is.
Yeah, a lot of people think it's like fixed, or some people think it's scaled to Sasuke himself, so like that also like just wouldn't help in that case as well, because like either or, like this isn't peak Sasuke or it's like fixed in your eyes. It doesn't really matter.
Getting knocked by Boruto after you get like this fusion, like it just looks, there's just so many like anti-feats you can give to Urashiki. Yeah, and wow, you can't really say the same thing about Delta, because she only has one fight, and that one fight is really impressive compared to what
it's a lot more solid. Yeah, I agree. It's just a lot more solid, to be honest. So I don't think anybody's rushing to Urashiki's defense like when looking at this.
Number 7, we have Kashin Koji. Again, this kind of gets more into the territory of what we talked about in TG's video. But Kashin Koji has kind of like similar feats to Delta, if not more impressive. Like if you look at his feats with like Jegan and Ishiki, and then you understand how well Jegan did against this Naruto and this Sasuke, who where the Naruto was at peak power, by the way, and then you look at Sasuke, who wasn't at quite at peak power just because he had to use teleportation. But then you have Kashin Koji, who can kind of like swap hands with like a fused Ishiki. I'm not at all saying Kashin Koji is that like fused Ishiki level. That's absurdity. For the people that think that, no, get that out of your head. No. But Kashin Koji, he thinks of himself as like also like he can take on Jegan as well. I think even Amato supports that as well. That's why Kashin Koji was made. So it's like he should be around this Jegan level, while you have, and you know, Jegan's feats with Naruto and Sasuke are pretty impressive. Then you have Delta, who is fighting arguably a peak Naruto, if not like a trying Naruto.
Also, to add on to that, like, you're not wrong at all. He also fights, like, you could argue, like, the Ishiki he fights is the, like, strongest form of Ishiki, because his life force is degrading the moment he's born, and then he just continues to fight. And it's like when your chakra just on, like, a base level is a mixture of your, like, mental energies plus, like, your physical or, like, your stamina. And that's, like, the fusion. That's why people, like, train their bodies. Like, there is, like, a reason for that. It's not all just, you know, ninjutsu. So, on, like, that front, too, like, you can make the argument, like, he's performing, like, against, like, the strongest Ishiki. He's performing these pretty impressive feats.
Yeah, like, it's just kind of like, imagine what Delta's done and then you kind of like replicate it in the same scenario. Yeah. It's just like, I don't really know if you can make the same argument for Delta here.
Lot more wiggle room and a lot more to play with. Like, it's just honestly.
There are arguments to say that Kashin Koji could be higher. It is a little weird at the same time, because it's like, there's arguments for both sides. I think like the safest route is to put Kashin Koji here and not highball him to levels I don't think fits.
A side note too, like Amato also notes that after Kashin Koji falls, like Naruto and Sasuke are like the only ones who have like a chance against Ishiki. And this is interesting because like Amato like forcibly like deactivates Delta. I mean, you could argue like she wouldn't have gone along with the plan, but you could also argue like, does that mean like Delta's not also on that level? Like she wouldn't have been useful in that confrontation. So there's also like a couple statements you could play with as well in that regard. At number 6, we have adult Sasuke. Now, adult Sasuke like is pretty. he's pretty impressive in Boruto era. There's a lot of arguments actually for him being superior than Naruto. Now, these get kind of like iffy, but on a service level, he'll like fight Naruto alongside Jegan, or he'll fight Naruto against Jegan. And Jegan will actually note that in combination with his hacks, he's more threatening to him than Naruto. This is due to the fact that like Sasuke can like perceive like the rods that like shrink and expand. And he's able to just like do a lot more with his hacks. And you can actually see this as well. He's fighting Ishiki, right? This opponent who's able to completely dismantle him, but he's able to actually continuously combat this opponent with his hacks as well. For example, like there's moments where Ishiki will actually kill Sasuke, but Sasuke will like deflect him with the sword or like switch spots with certain things. So it's just like he's able to like through hacks alone, just on a surface level, like combat fighters who are a lot stronger than him, which is just a testament to his power. But on a conventional scaling, you could also argue he would have to be on that level for him to implement these tactics. And this is just seen like, for example, Jegan, when he fights Naruto in his house, for example, like he pretty much, when Naruto goes like into 6 packs, he has to use his karma mark, which is a multiplication on one's power. No confirmed multiplier on it. We just know it's substantial. Similar to Sage Mode on all of their stats, jutsu, potency, speed, and power. And this is the same thing with Sasuke. Sasuke is able to combat this individual who's using the karma mark, who feels he needs to go into the karma mark to fight 6 packs Naruto, and goes beyond that in power. So Sasuke is also would be on this level in power. He's definitely on this tier as well, because he's able to combat these fighters at this speed who are like, you know, going into these multiplications in their stats.
I agree with that. I think like you can make the argument Sasuke could be higher. I think even number 6 to most people is pretty low, but like the characters after this are kind of like a given at the same time.
It's a leap. It's a bit of a leap, honestly. Like there's just kind of this jump in power.
Yeah, I think if we were to sort of like look at Kashin Koji, who is kind of like the only person I think kind of like hits this tier as well, you know, maybe arguably Delta. Like Kashin Koji is arguably matching Jegan, like base Jegan, and then potentially like peak Jegan that like bodies Naruto and Sasuke. However, you have like weakened Sasuke do just as good against Jegan as what Naruto did, which Naruto got thrashed, by the way. And
Naruto was arguably like more useless in that fight. Like if Sasuke wasn't there, he was gonna have like a way worse time in that confrontation as a whole. Sasuke was pretty much like the driving force in that whole fight.
I do remember you showing me that statement of Sasuke like being stated as a bigger threat than Naruto. I think does pretty much confirm that Sasuke is above Delta. Don't at me, Delta fans. You know who you are. But I do think Sasuke kind of has like more of a confirmed state than Kashin Koji, if that makes it like it's more of a safe answer, and it takes less assumptions, because you kind of have to like argue a lot to say that like Kashin Koji could be above like this peak Jegan, if that makes sense. And then like, you know, of course you can bring up Ishiki, his fights against Ishiki, but like that doesn't really work, because it's like while he kind of does decent, he gets bodied. It's not even like, that's like saying Naruto is stronger than Hamura or like whatever character because he got bodied by Jegan Ishiki. Like that doesn't really work. Even like that.
Even looking at like the story, like Kashin Kojin's like whole use was to like press Jegan into like becoming Ishiki or like switching over, and then like he was nothing. And then like Amato pretty much states like Naruto and Sasuke are like the ones who are gonna take him down pretty much. So it's like he's not even like able to like be entrusted with this task of taking on this individual, or like he's not deemed like useful enough to like even be included in that like mission. Which is also a point I think could be brought up.
I think that's a good point too. So reaching the halfway point, we have number 5 in Jegan. Who would have guessed? I mean, like, his feats kind of speak for himself. Yeah, like, this isn't really Ishiki. We're not really saying, like, we're gonna, not to spoil the list too much, but Ishiki and Jegan were counted as 2 different people. So if you're like, oh, like, why isn't Jegan higher? It's like, it's because we're considering them 2 different people.
Yeah.
But Jegan's feats really do speak for himself. He bodies Naruto and Sasuke, like, at their peaks. More so Naruto than Sasuke, of course, as I said earlier. Which greatly surpasses the questionable marks of Sasuke, Kashin Koji, and Delta with their questions of do they even scale to these peak versions while we have Jegan completely bodying
I have a really good way of like talking about this, like
Yeah.
just to kind of like give people a bit of perspective on like the power jump for Jegan, right? So you have like Karma Jegan like on that level with like base Naruto and Sasuke, and then like on top of this multiplication, he does what like Boruto does with Momoshiki, and like has like the Otsutsuki in him come out on top of his karma. So it's kind of like he has like this, some people call it like karma phase 2, but it's like, okay, like is this like a combination? Is this like a new level of power? So basically like he's able to like push himself to like a new level of power pretty much beyond like the combined efforts of Naruto and Sasuke. And he was already combating them before, but then he just has like another level that is like substantially above that. Like it's very similar to like Karma Boruto and his feats compared to like when Boroshiki like takes control. For example, the Boro fight, like Boroshiki's struggling with Boro. Here comes Boroshiki like slapping Boro. It's like there's a great jump. There's a big jump in like Otsutsuki kind of coming out versus just the karma mark. And like pretty much Jigen's able to implement that into like his regular arsenal. It's something, you know, that is regularly used. So that's kind of where like this great jump in power comes in. That's kind of where like Naruto and Sasuke are just really unable to do anything versus him.
Yeah, and it's just like, again, less question. Like, it just literally takes no assumptions to say Jigen's above. Like, if you want to apply Occam's razor, that's like the safest answer.
Yeah.
I think that's a general, like, good debating way of looking at it. It's just like, even the techniques, like, Jigen's techniques is so stupid because he can basically instantly, he can shrink and then come back, perform an Ant-Man basically, and he like, that's just such like a broken feat. Like, you can argue like even like the notations behind this and like maybe make some assumptions to highball that even as well, but like we're just getting to the point where like, why is Sasuke, Kashin, Koji, and Geltz even relevant? Like,
yeah, and like his hacks like are crazy too, because you brought that up. He's like Ant-Man. Like also like his dojutsu, I forget the name, I'm not trying to pronounce it, I'm not gonna butcher it in this video. Look it up, it'll go on screen. It's on screen now, bro. You see that? I'm not trying to pronounce that.
Yeah,
my bad.
Don't even at us about like trying to pronounce the bit, dude.
Essentially he can like whatever he perceives, he can shrink with his dojutsu eye, and that just goes down the list honestly, because like Kashin Koji, for example, like he fights like Jegan when Jigen's on his like deathbed after like fighting Naruto and Sasuke. So like Kashin Koji like wouldn't like reliably scale to Jegan from that feat alone. Same thing with like Urashiki with like his rod. Like Jegan could simply just shrink that and it wouldn't reach him. He could shrink like jutsu as well. It's just like, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. This dude can shrink everything. He can shrink like, and he can absorb jutsu. It's like, man, come on, bro. Dude. This is not like, this isn't fair, bro.
Jigen's like stupid. That's why, like, for the people questioning why is Sasuke at number 6, it's because from here on we get Jigen's tier and we get even more stupid.
At number 4, we have Code. Now, I'm gonna level. Let me put the level on like the plank of wood. Just, you see the bubble? Yeah. So I'm gonna level here. Code's very simple. Code greater than Jegan. The only way you could really like dismiss this claim is if you dismiss Amato's as a source, but we know Amato has like pretty much full intel on all of Jegan and Ishiki's abilities and like the details surrounding it. So like there's absolutely zero way to say like he's not a reliable source. It's just like he has full intel on all of this. So I think there's also like narrative intent here too, that like Code's supposed to be this like level above. You could argue this is like without his limiters. He could still have the limiters on, but we're not talking about that. We're just talking about Code as a whole. Obviously, we haven't seen that. So like, and it would be weird to talk about Code with his limiters as a separate form. Weird stuff. So just Code's very simple. And the only way you could really contest that is if you contest like Amato as a source.
Yeah, there's not like really a lot to say about Code. It's pretty much just that. So number 3, we have Ishiki. Ishiki could be higher. I think 3 is a pretty general safe area. We'll talk about why 3 will be probably the more preferable area for most people and us when we get to the higher numbers. But Ishiki is just basically Jegan on steroids. I think that's a great way to put it. He bodies Kashin Koji. Like, people love to say Kashin Koji is relative to Ishiki and all that. Like, no, like, he destroys Kashin Koji and like obliterates him. And then he goes on this rampage, beats Sasuke around.
Can I just like interrupt for just a second? Because you're not like, I need people, let's just go back for a second. Let's just go back. I need you to understand how badly this man beat Kashin Koji. He started sipping his bev in the middle of the fight, bro. Like, you don't do that unless you're like actually like slapping like the fool out of somebody. I'm sorry, I had to bring that up. Like, dude, it's like he demolished. They do this in Dragon Ball for a level. Like, for example, right, there's a scene where like Sasuke states like, he's like, I forget which one it is, but he's like, I can't even like perceive the rods, or I can barely perceive them. Like, the rods there getting shot out by Ishiki like at like this level when he's fighting Naruto in his Baron mode. So it's kind of like this level in Dragon Ball where like 2 fighters power up and like nobody can track their moves movements, just to kind of like demonstrate like the level they've reached is like quite a bit above what was previously established. Just like I think that's like also like really displayed.
Like, full power Ishiki doesn't have that many feats, but the feats he established are just so much better. I think that, like, there's not even really an argument to say Code is higher either, just because, like, Code is above Jegan, but Amato has no idea how strong full power Ishiki is, because that came after he built Code. So there's not much to say that Code's even above Ishiki, unless you, like, say that, like, Ishiki always knew that Code would eventually become stronger, but then again, that's, like, he would eventually, not he currently is. So
you could also argue like he straight up Code's not stronger than Ishiki just because like he's not. So and that sounds like, okay, well, let me explain on that because that sounds dumb. But so for example, like Amato, like let's say he does, like, you know, you go off the assertion that like he has full knowledge on Ishiki and his abilities. He simply just wouldn't lie. Like he's not the type of character to lie. He wouldn't intentionally like downplay Code to just be above Jegan but not Ishiki. If Code actually was above Ishiki, Amato would have just said that. That's straight up how it was. Like that's just what it would have been. Like there's no reason to suggest like this alternate route that, like, again, goes back to what you were saying with like Occam grade. Like you'd be going on like some weird like counter, you'd be going on like a lesser assumption that was previously established.
Super headcanoning too. Like
yeah. We got number 2, we got Naruto Baron mode. Now, this is pretty simple. You could argue, right? So there's a couple ways you could look at this. You could argue like Naruto's an inferior fighter than Ishiki because he did get timed out during that fight. But we do know verbatim, it stated during that fight, he had the power advantage. He was superior to Ishiki, like straight up power wise. He was able to like perform like better than him, and it's stated. And so it's just like, you could argue like Ishiki would win in a fight, but in terms of like stronger, like Naruto is in this case. And now the thing that separates like Naruto from like being like this invincible fighter is like his ability. I don't know Boro's thoughts on like Baron mode's ability. It works you could argue it works in a couple different ways. You could argue it's like percentage based, so like when you hit somebody, like it knocks a percentage of their life away, or you argue like it knocks like based on time, like just a couple hours, in which case that's horrible, in which case that would also work for Ishiki. That is awful. So it kind of depends like how you interpret that as well, also could affect this. Yeah, pretty much Naruto's really only here because of like his speed and power advantage. Like his, you know, new form doesn't really afford that many new hacks. Like honestly, like it's just kind of like that one iffy hack, which you could argue like wouldn't even be good versus somebody with like a normal like lifespan. So yeah, I think that's kind of just Naruto Baron mode. I don't know if you have anything to add, like any crazy, like anything for Naruto on that point.
There isn't really a lot. Like, he's the one that essentially, like, defeats Ishiki. Like, I think that's, like, a good way of putting it. It's like, yeah, he kind of cucked himself. But, like, Baron mode, like, although Ishiki can kind of swap hands, it's pretty clear Baron mode's dominating. And it's just, like, if you want to go off, like, percentage as well, like, imagine if, like, Sasuke fought Naruto at this stage. It's like, well, there goes 12 years of your life, or however many the percentage is. Like, it's just, like, he himself is kind of hacks with his ability, even though it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way, because, like, to be honest, it's worse Mugetsu. A lot of people agree with me on that. Again, kind of like with Ishiki, there's not a lot to say, just more so his feats are better, so he should just be put above Ishiki.
And, like, you could just argue he, like, punches everybody on this list and he wins. Like, that's it. Like, he's just stronger. Like, that's all you really need to say, honestly.
So number 1, easily, no question, is Ida, however you pronounce the name. Like, easily number 1, like, she can immediately put anyone under her love. Like, it's some type of, I don't even know how, unconscious ability. There's a better word for it. But it's like, how do you beat her?
Man, let me tell you about Ida, bro. Like Ida's like we all know what she is. Like certified like THOT. We all know it. You can read between the lines. Bro, she looks 14. Don't even put that on the internet. Like I don't want to hear any of that. You know what you're doing. She's tapping into your fetishes. Like, you look at you on the other side of that camera. You disgust. I'm kidding. But it's just like disgusting ability, bro.
So yeah, there you go. That's pretty much the top 10. So yeah, till next time. No, I'm joking, guys. In all seriousness, number 1, Hagoromo. Now, there's a lot of contention around Hagoromo. I think there's a couple different ways of looking at Hagoromo. 1, no, he's not as strong as Madara. Just because Madara thinks he gains the power like Hagoromo doesn't mean, 1, he even knows Hagoromo's power. 2, doesn't even mean that he can suddenly approach this fighter that's above Six Path Naruto himself, who can rival Kaguya at her peak. even scaling wise, that doesn't even make sense, because young Hagoromo and Hamura can fight a 10 tails summoned from the God Tree, not even from the 9 Biju, so it's actually stronger than the one we see in the War Arc. And same thing with Kaguya, she's stronger than the one we see in the War Arc as well, because she isn't in a weakened Madara body, she's in her own body, if that makes sense. Kind of like Edo Tensei, like Edo Tenseis are in a weaker body. So right there, scaling contradicts that, so no, do not want to see that argument. I think like...
I was gonna ask actually for the viewers, what's your stance on like dead Hagoromo being like above his like prime counterpart? Like he gets stronger after death, because like he's not affected by the time stream, he's able to see all the reincarnates like happen and like specifically choose Naruto and Sasuke. What's your stance on that? People are wondering that. I've heard that argument come about as well.
I think there's like a lot you can say, like the fact that he can exist simultaneously in 2 places in like different people's consciousnesses. That's like in itself a very impressive feat. Like I don't think you guys even understand how impressive that is, because like you can start arguing easily like extra dimensional levels of power. And if he's in the Pure Land, which the Pure Land, there's some statements that's like it's above time and space itself. Statements as well where like it's infinitely above what exists in the realms, which like if you look off like the time turtle traveling device, you can see like how they pop into different time points, and there's like infinite of that. You can kind of continue down those arguments, and it's just like, even if you don't want to agree with this, there's also just like, this is just simple knowledge. But Hagoromo trains for eons with his 6-path powers. He has the 10 tails in him. So the 10 tails is stronger than the 9 tails, especially the one that sprouted from the God Tree, which he has himself. So he has a stronger Biju in him, and he's training even longer than what Naruto trained with his 6-path powers. So right there, like no matter what, he's going to be above this 6-path Naruto. Thunder God, you want to go over the Baron mode idea I gave you?
oh gosh. Okay, so we were talking about this before the recording a little bit, but like you could put the idea, actually, like I was thinking about it actually as you were talking, like you could put forth the idea that like Hagoromo would be capable of doing the same thing, and like could you argue he could do it with the 10 tails too? So it's like a bigger buff on top of like the 9 tails. So like he just uses his own chakra and like the 10 tails or like the 9 tails, like he can achieve like a buried mode like similar with the tailed beast. So you could argue he's capable of doing that as well. I don't actually think there's anything to suggest he couldn't, like unless you argue like an intelligence factor, like he's not aware of the idea. But then you'd argue like like Kurama is more intelligent than Hagoromo, which I don't know. I wouldn't take that argument.
Which Kurama got all his information from Hagoromo, so good luck proving that. I think something else to bring up is the fact that he would actually have a more OP Baron form as well, because you can argue Hagoromo has infinite chakra, because even if you don't think the Pure Land, he draws power from that, and you don't take the data book statements, blah blah blah, you do have the fact that he can replenish his chakra instantly, because he gives away his six path powers twice. He also gives away a Renegon, and he has it in the next shots. So it's like he gives away freely to this power. He's
giving people Renegons, bro, like in 6-path form.
Sasuke's
like,
Renegon, by the way.
Yeah. Same one, like every Boruto villain's like, fuck, Sasuke's Renegon. Gotta get rid of that, like right now. Like that he just gave him that, like no dip.
And then there's also like the fact that he can summon people from the dead. Like if you think that Hagoromo beats, I don't know, someone on this list, he can eventually work his way up to and start killing people. And then he can then summon them from the dead, help him beat up people. Like you see what I mean? Like it can eventually start turning into that. He can also the possibility he travels throughout time if you take that statement literally. Like there's just so much that you can say about Hagoromo, and it's just greatly above.
So I think he just like eclipses everybody on this list by like light years, and just in terms of hacks alone. Like he's just in another, like you could just make the argument like he has like maybe like arguing like some of the scientific ninja tools. He straight up just has like hacks like above, he has every hacks and like is above everybody and like their abilities. Maybe like not some of the Otsutsuki powers, because those are like super specific like Urashiki, but like he's just on another level, like infinite like Izanagi, if you want to take that, like all this crazy stuff, man. Oh my god.
Dude, imagine Ishiki tries shrinking, and then he gets Izanami. Or Izanagi,
yeah,
and then
like
looped into Izanami. Like, how do you win that? Like,
yeah, that's also like, that's interesting too, because like that Izanami actually happens like a lot earlier in the fight than like a lot of people realize too. Like between like Sasuke, Itachi, and like Kabuto. So it doesn't even take that long to really activate. I think the anime kind of stretches it out more, but it really doesn't take that long for it to activate. I think it's like, I think it's only even a chapter, but it's like not long at all. Yeah, it's not really, it does not take long at all.
I think that's pretty much it. I don't really have anything else to say. I think we covered the top 10 pretty well.
We did our thing, man. Like, that was an excellent video, bro. Like and subscribe again if you didn't, bro. Like, I'm coming for you if you didn't. I'm lying. But let's close this video out.
10,000 subs and likes in, let's say, 2 months, and I'll drop the unreleased Monger TG and Voro 1 hour and 30 video. That is pretty hilarious, but I won't spoil it anymore.
It's not that good, guys. He's capping. It's not. Let me stop.
Anyways, make sure to go check out TG's channel. We did a video over on his channel that pretty much covers this in a certain way, but I think it's a good video that kind of reflects both videos and can definitely touch up on why we have certain characters above other characters. Definitely a good watch. Go check out to my man TG. Make sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you all later.